In this video, we're talking about the pros and the cons to taking short notice fights. So, I've been a fighter and now I'm a trainer. So, I've had little bits of experience with both of them. Taking fights on short notice and taking fights on full training camp. UFC 300, about a week ago, there was a fighter who took a fight on 4 hours notice. Now that is mind-blowing and crazy. But I also think there were a lot of pros to taking that fight short notice. So, let's start off with, I think it also depends on whereabouts in your career you are as a fighter. So if you're a young up-and-coming fighter, for starters, you should be down the gym all the time. And to a certain extent, like I say, when you're an amateur and you're up and coming, you kind of don't really have training camps. You're just sort of in the gym grinding all the time, trying to get fights as and when they come up. So you're a lot more used to almost taking sort of a short notice fight, or like I say, taking fights as and when they come up. You should always be in the gym. You should always be trying to keep fit and keep on that level. Especially if you're quite young, as a fighter, you don't often get quite as hurt because when you're an amateur or when you're younger, you're more often wearing protective gear. So depending on what you're doing, you might have your shin pads on, you might have head guard. So some of that does take into consideration. As well, the rounds are normally a lot shorter. So there ain't actually as much time for game plans and things like that, which you would find on a longer camp where you would be trying to do game plans for people. The only thing I would say which is a negative to this is the peak aspect of training. So when you're training and you're trying to level up, you want to peak before you fight. Where if you're in the gym just grinding all the time, you're not almost getting to the point where you're peaking because you're trying to stay at a certain level, because obviously you don't want to peak too early, too soon, and sometimes, like I say, you don't always know where you're fighting. If you're taking fights as and when, you might take a fight, then a month later you might have another fight, then a month later you might have another fight, but that's just how it is as an amateur and when you're up and coming. So let's talk about a bit more high level now when you start to get into pros. So, let's talk about pros and cons for that, because like I say, it is a little bit of a different concept. If you're an amateur, I would say don't be too worried about taking short notice fights. As well, in your amateur career, I also don't believe it doesn't really matter if you lose as much. Yeah, people take too much emphasis on winning and losing. In the amateurs, that's when you're learning, yeah? So it doesn't matter if you lose as much. Pros, so let's talk about the pros. So losing when you're in the pros hurts for starters, not just emotionally, but physically. When you're fighting, especially for MMA, and you've only got them little gloves on, you're not coming out of that fight unless you knock them out extremely quick, like running across the ring and doing that jump in nearly knock them out quick, or doing a Conor McGregor where you just slip and knock them out very, very quick. Other than that, you're not getting out of it without bumps and bruises and little injuries. So you need to be prepared for that. You need to be prepared and be trained properly. And there's a lot of gaps in between fights. That's why you have the training camp. It gives your brain time to recover from your fight. Otherwise, you'll be fighting every week. I know the Thais tend to do that. They fight a lot. I cover a lot of stuff about Thai boxing, so I will mention that. They fight a lot. But they're just a different kettle of fish, yeah? They're a different breed. But anyway, for a full proper MMA camp, should you take fights on short notice when you're at a pro level? So let's go from the positives to a full training camp. You're ready, you're going to peak at the right time, and you've had time to prepare for a certain style of fighter, which can sometimes take a long time or a longer time to adapt to. Let's go through a couple of what could be a con for a long training camp. You peak too early. That could be a con. and the mental fatigue, knowing that you've got a long, like you've got a fight coming up in ahead of time in 3 months' time, say, that's constantly got to be on your mind, so you do get a bit of mental fatigue. So let's talk about the pros to taking a short notice fight. So the pros to taking a short notice fight, you ain't got that mental aspect as much because you've not got as long to be thinking about it and getting prepared for it. I mean, I mentioned Conor McGregor earlier, but Conor McGregor, Jose Aldo, a lot of people, a lot of the experts say, and including myself, he won that fight in the build-up to it. All the getting in Jose Aldo's head and all stuff like that. That's how he ends up winning the fight. So if Jose Aldo would have had a shorter training camp for that fight, he may not have been as at that elite fit level, but he wouldn't have had Conor McGregor in his head for as long, and it might not have gone the way it did. Who knows? We won't know unless they start fighting again, but I very much doubt it. So there are definitely pros to taking a short notice fight. Now, I actually think, believe it or not, the shorter notice the fight, as long as you're in the gym training, yeah, if you're not training as much or you're not training that hard and you're just dilly-dallying, then this ain't gonna be effective. But if you're in the gym and you're still training hard, but you're not sort of peaking, but you're still keeping fit and you're still turning up, you may not be doing as quite hard sparring, but you're still turning up to the gym, doing a bit of sparring now and again, pad work, drilling. You're just in the gym, you're in that gym life. The shorter notice to fight, I actually think the better, because you haven't got all that time to think about it. And as well, there's the aspect what we haven't talked about yet, the fact of you're going to make your promotion happy. I mean, like I said, that UFC fighter, this sounds really bad, I can't think of his name, the one who fought at UFC 300, took that fight on 4 hours notice. He's already put out that he got paid very kindly for that, and Dana White is actually going to love him for that. He loves fighters like that, he loves people that take short notice fights. So that's going to work in his favour. If that was for a title, then maybe he should have said no, but he's not at that title level yet. He's not undefeated, so he hadn't got to worry about padding out an undefeated record, and he put on a really good performance and almost won that third round. So that was absolutely brilliant. I think he done the right decision taking that fight short notice. Now, there's been fights in the past where people have taken them quite short notice for title fights. Now, something at that level, I don't think it's a good idea. You need the full training camp. You need to be training for that style of fighter. You need to be peaking at that right time. So, the whole point of the video of this is the takeaway from this is the lower level you are, the more risks you should take taking a short notice fight. As the level gets higher and higher and higher, you've really got to weigh up the pros and the cons. Now, if you're going to take a short notice fight, like I said, almost make sure it's got really, really short notice, so you do get them benefits to it. If it's like 2 or 3 weeks time, sort of short notice, it's going to be too difficult trying to cram in all the training you need for that. But as well, you're going to still have time to think about it, so you're still going to have the mental aspect. So there's the pros don't really weigh up the cons for that. So the shorter notice to fight, sometimes the more beneficial it is. Obviously, ideally, you want a long training camp, but it don't always go in that direction. If you've got a title fight, even if it's an area title fight at a small show or something like that, then maybe you shouldn't take the short notice fight. Maybe you should try and get the full training camp in. But like I was saying earlier, this really can't be answered properly in a video. You've just got to be 100% honest with yourself. How often are you in the gym? Are you fit at this point? Are you not fit? Can you go the rounds? Can you go the distance? You've got to ask all these questions. You've got to ask, how's it going to benefit you taking this fight short notice if you win or lose? Like I said, the fight on the weekend took that fight short notice, lost, but everyone's loving him for it. So he was in a win-win situation to a certain extent, taking that fight short notice. If he had won, that would have been absolutely brilliant for him. He lost, but he still put up a good performance, almost won it in the third round, and probably will now get a rematch where he can have a proper training camp. And his confidence is going to be through the roof, having a proper training camp now behind him. So, there are pros, there are cons. You've got to ask yourself deep down, honestly, are you ready for it? You've got to weigh out the pros and cons, and you've got to really try and think about it before you just answer on the spot. I know a lot of people out there, when you're a fighter, you want to do that do or die mentality. I'll fight anyone, anytime, anywhere, all that stuff, but it don't really work out like that. Trust me, if you've got a diarrhea sickness bug, you ain't wanting to fight someone the next day. I don't care who you are, so just bear that sort of stuff in mind. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. Check out the video over here where I give some more MMA tips. This playlist right here.